Section 2 is limited to the state of emergency. Joining us via phone call from Lagos State is Barrister Bankole Adetitun. He's a seasoned lawyer and we're happy to have him on the lawyer's team. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you. It's nice to also be with you.
Sir, before you joined us, there's been a back and forth on the constitutionality of the suspension of the governor of Rivers State with the declaration of a state of emergency. And there's an opinion that the purport of the section 305 sub 3C and D intends by the mention of extraordinary measures that the president can go into even suspension of the governor of any state for the interest of peace and justice. And would you say that it was a discretionary, that this is a discretionary power with respect to the purpose of section 305 that says extraordinary measures for the interest of peace? So what's your take on this, sir?
I do not believe that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria gives room for suspension of any elected officer. I will also say that if you look at the entirety of section 305, there is no particular place in the entirety of that section where the president is empowered to suspend a sitting governor or the House of Assembly. If that has been done by Olusegun Obasanjo, that does not make it right. Now, let me also say this, that section 305 talks about state of emergency. And from my understanding of what a state of emergency is, or what the proclamation of state of emergency is more of a government attention to certain policies, to certain area of governance, and it's not an intention to sack the entire government.
Before you came on board, we had established that there was already a breakdown of constitution. There was already a breakdown of the rule of law in the state between the executive arm and the legislative arm. So, not to sound like there's a bit of that.
I would disagree with you.
Okay.
Totally. That there's a breakdown of law and order in Rivers State. The reason why I would disagree with you, I know where you are coming from, the dispute between the executive and the legislative.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, that issue has been put to rest by the Supreme Court. If anyone is talking about it, it's just the imagination of such a person. The State House of Assembly already met, sat down, wrote to Fubara, already responded. And even in the process, the State House of Assembly are already of the opinion that by the judgment of the Supreme Court, that Fubara has committed gross misconduct. All of these things have been established, and government business is going on smoothly in Rivers State. So now, let's talk about section 3C and D. So the entirety of sub 3 of section 305. Now, if you look at C, that is any part thereof, we operate a federal system of government. That is the sharing of power between the component state of a nation. So the nation, the Rivers State, for instance, is a part of Nigeria. So you will see that in that C and D, that is the only place in the entirety of subsection 3 where the president is empowered to declare state of emergency in a country, or in a part of Nigeria. Now, it talks about breakdown of public order. Now, from what I just said about the decision of the Supreme Court, which the president also acknowledged in his proclamation, then if there's a decision by the Supreme Court, then there's no actual breakdown of order or public safety as far as the dispute between the executive and the legislature in Rivers State. Now, if you look at the other part where the president was hinging on when he talked about the bombing of the vandalization of pipeline.
Yes.
Yeah, let me take you to sub 4 of 305. It states, and I read, that the governor of the state may, with the sanction of a resolution supported by 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly, request the president to issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in the state when there is in existence within the state any situation specified in subsection 3C and D. 3C, D, and E of this section, and such situation does not extend beyond the boundaries of the state. Now let's go to 5. It says the president shall not, is a mandatory provision, shall not issue a proclamation of state of emergency in any case to which the provision of subsection 4 of this section may apply, unless, makes it a conditional precedent, unless the governor of the state fails within a reasonable time to make a request to the president to issue such proclamation. What it means thereof is that that reasonable time is there for a reason.
But is
So
that not
if
up for
there
interpretation? Reasonable time, is it not ambiguous in this context? The president could
now
argue that he
now
feels that this is
I
a
was
reasonable time.
I was expecting that you would say that too. Now those things that you put into consideration is the time when the issue arrives. Then two, the time for the governor to make such a request to the House of Assembly. Then three, you also consider the time which it will take the National House of Assembly to make two-thirds to endorse such a request before it is sent to the president. Now you agree with me that the vandalization of the pipeline and the proclamation of the president is less than 6 hours.
Let's take into consideration that the vandalization was not the only grounds for which the president was declaring state of emergency. He had mentioned that the executive and the legislative arm were not working together and that the executive was trying to override the powers of the legislative. So let's look at it holistically. Would you say that the president felt that this was reasonable time, considering that every tenure or every presidential regime has always had a security issues in the history of Nigeria? Would you say that the president was not taking ample measures, strict measures, as it were, a difficult decision to make sure that his regime is not tainted by a new insurrection?
Now, thank you. Okay, I already said the moment of that proclamation, vandalization is just 6 hours. Now, yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, after the verdict, the decision of the Supreme Court, that there's any dispute between the legislative and the executive branch, because that issue has been resolved. What the president has done now is to punish the parties in that action, even without hearing those parties. It is wrong. Sorry, let me quickly say this. When you read TVC, it says actual breakdown. It is something that is real. Actual breakdown. What happened? Something that is, it's not hypothetical. It's not someone thinking that, just like I said, the legislative arm was already functioning. The executive arm too is functioning. So why would the president choose to now punish both of them? Because part of the function of the legislative arm of government is to impeach the governor. So they have started functioning. In his interview to the media, says to stand by the decision of the Supreme Court. So why would someone who is not even part of the house, because they go up the
from ab initio, the president have taken steps. And what was the step? To make sure that everything, the issues were resolved amicably. Now, I haven't gotten here. When the Supreme Court gave their judgment, we all see the what's it called? The body gesture for the both parties. It wasn't working. It's as if somebody that have authority make a proclamation in the presence of the Supreme Court and nobody is ready to dance to it. Was it not during that period that the governor was locked out of entering the plenary session? It was widespread on the social. So what are we saying? There's still a connection between the executive and the legislative arm? It's outright no. Was it not this after the post judgment that there was bombing in Rivers State or the pipeline? This was not in place even before. But if we are now saying the action of the president in declaring state of emergency and to even go as far as suspend the governor and the lawmaker is totally out of the power of the president, then we are not saying the right thing. So that is so the only thing that we can do, whoever is disagree with it and don't want to express statement from the constitution, is to take it up further to the judiciary to interpret or to the National Assembly to make a new law in regarding it. So the president has not acted as a dictator in every aspect. It's for the peace of Rivers State and for the peace of Nigeria. Every order of Rivers State, I don't think then you cannot tell that they are still in good state.
You know, at this point, I think we would keep going back and forth and we'll keep having dissenting opinions. And I believe that everybody speaking is not speaking from a political angle, they're speaking based on the constitution and for, democracy.
Now, I'm happy that we are also discussing this because this is also one way or the other our contribution to national development. Now, let me take you back to section 1 sub 2 of the Constitution, and it reads, the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall not be governed, note, nor shall any person or group of persons take control of the government of Nigeria or any part thereof is not, except in accordance with the provision of this constitution. Now let's ask ourselves this simple question: who is presently the head of affairs in Rivers State? Who is governing Rivers State? My answer would be that the sole administrator is the one governing Rivers State. Now I ask myself this simple question: in the entirety of the voluminous constitution that we have in Nigeria, I think it's about 500 or if not more sections, just point to a place where it is written that the sole administrator can cover any part of the country. No place. That practice is entirely strange, is an affront to our federalism, is an affront to our constitution, and that's no place at all to rest in law. And if you are stating security, who is supposed to ensure that those pipelines were not vandalized? Despite several threats, the president sat in his office. Nobody was doing anything. No special surveillance of those pipelines, and someone burst into it. Now you want to blame, you want to punish the entirety of the state for not doing your work. If someone threatens to kill me, will I still be sleeping conveniently in my house? Will I not take measures to ensure that that person will not eventually kill me? People were in the media threatening to bomb pipeline. The president did not do anything. He was there. He was sleeping. And now eventually,
Mr. Bankole, sorry sir, to just respond to what you said. Are you telling us now that the duty of the president primarily is to make sure that every state in Nigeria, that he interfere in every state matters in Nigeria? As far as we are concerned, the duty of a governor is the chief security officer of his state. Now, drawing from that fact, which was one part of the reason why all the president said, the governor, when this threat came in play, the governor did not do anything. Because as an active and proactive person, that you make sure that the security of your state is your priority, you should have responded and make sure that you deploy all the security agency to those infrastructure and make sure that when you respond. But he didn't do anything. It was after this declaration that he now had to come to the public and say it doesn't have any relationship with militant. So what are we now telling ourselves? So if the governor has failed to act in his own capacity, his constitutional duty, and the president step in, I don't think the president is to be blamed in this.
Which of the security agencies do we have in Nigeria that is being controlled by a governor? Just mention one that Fubara will have deployed to ensure that those pipelines were safe. Which of the security agency do you want to talk about? Nigerian police is exclusive. Is under the exclusive list. The policing in Nigeria is under the exclusive list. The military exclusive to the federal.
Okay, I think that question is to me, right?
Yes.
So now it's very simple, Mr. Bankole. Even though all the agencies, the security in the country are in exclusive list, it is very simple. Are you now telling me because it's an exclusive list, your state is going haywire? Then you should keep quiet and say, I'm waiting for the president for Abuja to speak. What are you supposed to do as a proactive leader, as a responsible leader? What are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to close your eye and make sure that it's until they bomb before you now say, and now that Abuja now responded, you're now saying Abuja have done the wrong thing?
I think he's trying to say that the president responded prematurely. That the president, it was not the right time for the president to interfere in the state affairs. He should have given him time to even react. So I think that's the point
why we were trying to look into reasonable timing.
Yes, reasonable time.
We need to talk about what amounts to reasonable time in this such situation.
Pipeline
was vandalized in like less than 24 hours. The president was declaring state of emergency. We agree with Barisayo. Hold on. We know that now the president stepped in. Now the situation is while the president is stepping in to restore this law and order. I will keep repeating this line. Does this give the president the right? Does this section we've been banking on give the president the right to then suspend the executive? Yes, the executive and the state lawmakers of a particular state. It's never done.
Extraordinary measure.
It's not extraordinary in this situation. We've tried.
I think we might need to go to the court for the interpretation of one reasonable time and extraordinary measures, because, like I said,
extraordinary measure in this situation could have been sending out the military to the states.
It could be anything. It could be anything.
Extraordinary measure does not give you the right to go against the constitution. So any extraordinary measure that must be taken should be in line with the constitution. Let's not forget that. Any extraordinary measure that you are going to take and you are going to follow, let's do it in line with the constitution. If it's not in line with the constitution, what is that? It is inconsistent. Therefore, null and void.
But the extraordinary measure was provisioned of the constitution.
Exactly.
What we are saying is,
that's all.
Now interpreting extraordinary measure will take us back to the introductory part of the constitution.
Yes.
If you want to come in and say extraordinary measure, this extraordinary measure should still be things that are in line with the provisions of the constitution. If you are going to have extraordinary measure that is against the constitution, that is inconsistent with the constitution, is null and void. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So if you are saying extraordinary measure, we keep throwing the word extraordinary measure around, we keep throwing it around. What then is extraordinary measure that will be against the constitution? That should be the question. Should we now say extraordinary measure can be anything? If it is just anything, then president will start removing governors of the state.
He didn't remove.
Suspension.
Sorry, sir.
Now, if you see, if I'm a student of a university and in my admission letter, it was written in my admission letter that I'm supposed to spend 5 years in the university. And in the process, I was caught for examination malpractice and I was suspended for 2 years. Now, I'm a 300 level student. Does it mean that when I come back, I'll come and graduate because it's already 5 years? Now,
that scenario does not even work here.
It works.
Let me break it down.
It works.
If I'm elected as a governor for 4 years, and in the middle of it, maybe I'll spend 2 months, 2 years, I'll spend 2 years, 2 months, 4 days. By the time you now lift my suspension, where do you think I will start my regime from? I'll start from 2 years,
4 months, and 3
2 months,
Good.
and 5 days. That's where I start from. You know, I asked a question earlier. I said, point to me where in this constitution that says that a sole administrator at the dictate of a man who says he's the president can be the governor of a state.
It's not in the constitution.
No, he's not.
Where in the entirety of this constitution is it that a state can run without legislative power? So can you tell me the network?
Now, this extraordinary measure, does it give the president the right to suspend a governor, in your own opinion? Because the word extraordinary measure,
I think he has answered that. I think he has answered that.
We are good on that.
We are not good on that in the sense that we have a decision. We are good on that in the sense that people are interpreting these laws differently. You are of the opinion that extraordinary measures does not entertain what is in contravention of the constitution. He is of the opinion that extraordinary measures is reasonable and right at this point in time by the president. But I think a new issue that was raised by Mr. Bankole is the extension or non-extension of time of the governor with respect to his suspension. Will there be an extension of time in consideration of the 6 month period? I want to have,
in my opinion, that is my position. I believe that suspension by interpretation means it's just you putting an hold to something and does not cause termination to what you are putting an hold to. You are not saying you are terminating this tenure, you are only suspending the tenure. Therefore, upon the expiration of declaration, there is no further extension of the said 6 months as provided by the Constitution. Should Governor Fubara comes back and is being reinstated as the governor of the state, he has the right to complete his 4 years, and the 6 months that has been used will still have to be used in his office.
Tayo, what do you think?
If I happen to be Governor Fubara, suspended Governor Fubara, I will approach the court without any fear or favor. I will approach the court for the court to interpret that 6 months, and for the court to what, to give me that power to spend that my 6 month suspension period, so that by the time they are doing, because Rivers election is in the normal cycle with elections up to be 2027, so our own election should not hold that 2027. It might be that 2027, but 6 months after.
Okay.
I must spend that my 6 months complete, and that is the area that I agree with Vice Adfolake to.
So can I also say that I don't know the reason why I'm finding myself on the other side with them.
Okay.
Mr. Ayo. If I were to be on the bench at the Supreme Court or at any stage, as it is now, should approach me and say that he's entitled to use that 6 months. Unfortunately, I'll reject that claim. I would refuse and even grant a huge cost against him. You know why? Because what the president did by suspending him, as it is today, and the way I see it, that's why I said if I'm the one on the bench, it's illegal. So if he had contributed to ensuring that illegality stays for 6 months, he cannot therefore come forward and say that he wants to use that 6 months, because there's no place in the constitution that his tenure should be suspended in the first place. What I'm trying to say is Governor Fubara should first challenge this suspension as a nullity in the first place. It is only when the Supreme Court make a pronouncement, if the suspension is a nullity or otherwise, that we can now know if he is entitled to spend additional 6 months. If the suspension is a nullity, it means that this guy, the sole administrator, is using part of his term, and he had consented to it by leaving and not fighting for that, and not fighting to ensure that his right is protected. So he's not entitled, as it is today, even if I were to decide it, he's not entitled to spend additional 6 because he contributed to the illegality.
Thank you very much for that opinion. We'll take a short. We have a lot of dissenting opinions even here in the studio. There are people for the yes go president. There is the president take caution. There is the no president is illegal and ultra vires of your powers. We'll take some comments from our studio audience. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
My name is Barrister Odnaka Okoyagu. My question goes like this. 5 sub C provides that there should be an actual breakdown of law and order.
Yes.
So in this situation, can we actually say that there is an actual breakdown of law and order, or there is a purported or imminent breakdown of law and order in Rivers State at this point before the president declared a state of emergency? Because when you look at the constitution, it provided that there should be an actual breakdown. The vandalization of the pipelines just happened. And the second question goes like this. The constitution provides that the president will only act within a reasonable period of time. So can we say that he has acted within a reasonable period of time?
Okay.
That is my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me quickly answer your question, and that's the kind of question I'll be expecting. Now, from ab initio, there has been an actual breakdown of law and order and all. If you recall, I think more than 14 months ago, the governor, suspended Governor Fubara, destroyed where the lawmaker do hold their plenary. It destroyed their place of business, all in the name of information within the street that is not, the building is not living worthy and all. But the right question is, since 14 months ago, has he built another one for the lawmaker for them to be doing their business? The answer to that question is no. So there has been a long time ago an actual breakdown of law and order. Now, for the reasonable time, since that has been in place, there has been a lot of reasonable time. You believe me that reasonable time does not mean that it must be in 1 year. It will not mean that it will be a 6 months. Reasonable time. So if since 14 months this has not been in place, down to when all this up and down started between the executive and the legislative, then I think the reasonable time has been activated and the president is on the right track.
I'll ask this question in response to that. We know that there's checks and balances in the system. The executive, the legislature, the judiciary, they all check each other. Is it the right place? Because this has been the bone of contention. It's not even just the reasonable time. It's not just the breakdown of law and order. Would this context amount to what will envision a federal intervention? Which is still taking us back to what we have been saying in the beginning. Is federal intervention in saying the executive and legislative are not getting along, so let me declare a state of emergency and suspend both of them? Is it right for federal intervention? Which is still the crux of the matter that we're talking about. If you are saying that 14 months he demolished this, he did that, does it still warrant that you suspend the governor and suspend the legislative and declare a state of emergency?
Is that question to me?
well,
Well, it's yes, if it's to me, because everything about
Falake, what's your response to that?
My response to it is just state my opinion. I
You
made
see,
it
lawyers can do
earlier.
it. Lawyers don't say yes or no, but let her finish.
I made my opinion clear earlier.
Yes.
The states, river states, there is a need for law and order.
Okay.
But I'm not of the opinion for suspension because it has not gotten to a stage where the president should suspend. Not that it hasn't gotten to. There is no provision. There is no law that gives the president the right to suspend an elected official. That's my position. But yes, looking at, I concur and I agree with my Sayo on the state of emergency in the state. That there is a need for state of emergency in River State. There is a need for state of emergency. The state needs to experience peace.
Okay.
And I agree with that, but I disagree with the suspension part of this.
What would you think that this spells out for our federalism in Nigeria? Is it going to be of a positive or a negative impact?
It's for me, it's going to be a negative. This brings me to the situation of, because we know according to the constitution, this 305, the president did not unilaterally suspend, because I've seen a lot of opinions, not to name names, but I've seen a lot of opinions of persons saying the president unilaterally. No, the president did not suspend the governor and the state lawmakers of River State. The president suspended, and in accordance with the constitution, it was ratified by the
National Assembly.
National Assembly. What it is going to look like on our democracy and federalism is the fact that check and balances, that word needs to be upheld. I see it like they performed their own acts, and according to the constitution, it has been ratified. So the president did not just perform the act, and this is the position of the constitution. It has been done.
Yes.
And what needed to be done to make it solid has even been done.
Yes.
In my opinion, the president has the right. The National Assembly also have the right to do what they did. So take us back to the National Assembly. Have in mind that the president did not have the National Assembly in his pockets.
Yes.
These are like elected officials.
The National Assembly is a representative of the Nigerians. So it's just like Nigerians spoke through the National Assembly.
So these are persons that we elected for our own constituency, people representing us. So they are there for us. Should they think that the president have done the right thing and they've ratified it, then the president have done the right thing because we elected them. Yes. They are there because of us.
Yes.
So, and they are there to do our own bidding. So whatever is being done right now in the National Assembly, it's from us.
I think that point also emphasizes that the executive and the legislation is on the same page.
Yes.
With the suspension of the governor.
Yes.
And I think any other view that or opinion we might have on it will be to the interpretation of the judiciary, yes. Not necessarily how we feel about it. Yes. I think it's more of the judiciary.
That's the only angle that is left for us to now say, should you want to decide, should Governor Fubara wants there to be an interpretation. The only arm of government that is left for him to explore now is the judiciary.
Yeah.
And interpretation really needs to be done.
Yeah, like what we claim.
Extraordinary measure.
We also need to look at where the constitution says that anything inconsistent with it is null and void. But we also need to look at part of the constitution that says we the people of Nigeria. So if the National Assembly is we the people, the National Assembly is us, it's our representatives. So if the National Assembly has ratified the government, it's tantamount to saying by extension that the government is within his powers, within his rights, and he has taken all necessary steps to ensure that he's not going outside of his powers to suspend the governor of Rivers State. But like I said, I think we would need the judiciary to lay down some
step in at this
to lay down some interpretations.
And then if there's a need for finally on that, there might be a need for constitutional review in that effect, because I've been hearing the word removal, the word suspension. We agree, we know that suspension and removal they are not synonymous. Suspension is very different from removal. So we know that, but there is no provision for suspension in the constitution. Maybe this is the time for us to have a constitutional review to see to this part, because this is more or less like a lacuna in our constitution.
Yes.
And this constitution is voluminous enough for us to have all those things.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So regarding that, judiciary cannot emanate cases on their own. You and I will need to.
I've seen a case of this matter already that has been filed.
Yes, good. What we are going to is that you and I need to go to approach the court by filing the case before judiciary can interpret. So if we keep quiet and whatsoever, and I'm happy the fact that Barrister Falake say a case is there, I think that should be from PD. It should be from PD that they went to Supreme Court on the constitutionality.
Interpretation that needed to be.
So I heard about the PDP approaching Supreme Court on it to interpret that particular session. So it is until that once we have a willing people to approach the court, then that is when judiciary will step in to interpret either in support or suspension. Ultimately, we need to, we have interpretation laws, and so it's not everything we interpret literally. There are some we have to apply the golden rule and extrajudicial rules and all. So we need to have it so we should not look at things based on emotional, look at the feelings and the like. So law is beyond morality and all. They are two distinct parallel lines that they don't meet. So, but until judiciary is otherwise, what has happened?
Thank you very much. I think we have one more question from our studio audience. Please give her the mic. Kindly introduce yourself.
Okay. Good day, everyone. My name is Olayinka, and I'm a lawyer. So my concern is that I feel like I have a concern and I have a question. I feel like, okay, yes, the president has the liberty to declare state of emergency, but does that also give him the power to suspend a sitting governor? And then my question is, after 6 months of suspension, what's next? What does the states, what's their hope? What's the next thing?
I find that question interesting because the president said for an initial system.
Yes, and that's
so what's the purpose?
The constitution states that upon the expiration of this initial 6 months, the National Assembly can go ahead and extend it for another period of 6 months. Is the provision of the constitution. So that's why it was set for an initial. So I think this time or this opportunity is for the president to see to it whether peace has been restored, and if you see to it that everything is going well in accordance with the law and there's security in the states, then the president can then remove the administrator and reinstate the governor, the deputy governor, and also
but one of the grounds for which this state of emergency was declared is that the executive and legislative are not working together, and now they've been suspended. What parameters do we know? How you are by?
I'm not a politician, but it is very. See, there must be issue. There's no how we can do away with the fact that issue will not occur. Misunderstanding will always take place. But how do we go away from that? Is by us listening to our complaints. That particular thing that makes us to misunderstand and have an issue. Therefore, us to want to share our sword and make sure that we have a listening.
How then do they come
now,
together?
it is very easy. There had to be a party that will broker the peace, which the president need to set up a reconciliation committee to bring the two parties to the table. Executive, what was your issue? Let us, what was your issue? After tabling everything, then from there they come together.
Are you not shooting yourself in the foot? Because you had earlier mentioned that the president had already taken steps to mediate between the problems of the executive and legislature in the past.
Yes.
So doing the same thing now, does it, because he had done it, they had agreed at the presidential villa that we would take your position. So what is the assurance that if they come and have a reconciliation meeting, they will stick to what they are?
By then, all the parties now are not really in place. By then, I don't think the legislator, the lawmaker were part of that meeting by then. So, but this time around, they're in the picture. So they have to bring them in. When they bring them in, it is what the legislator wants is for the governor to do the right thing.
But I'm still of the opinion that there is still no parameter in place. The cause for which he declared the state of emergency.
They can come around, like you said, meet, discuss these things, and okay, yes, we are good now. We'll go ahead. We'll continue to operate. And by the time they reinstate them, we see the other side.
It's simple.
Because we are human.
It's simple. Once they give the president their words, say we are not going to what, we are going to make sure our state is good, and they go back and they say
They
it
should now
happen.
declare another state of
That's why we declare another state of emergency.
No, not for such. No.
And what do you have me to say?
No, I'm just trying to say. This brings me back to what I was saying initially. If we look at this thing very well, if we look at this thing so clearly now, we know that should these persons have been allowed to continue to operate in their offices with this state of emergency in place, it will give the president opportunity to intervene and see to them performing their roles, their responsibility, their constitutional responsibilities, without them having to assume. Because in this case now, it's going to be an assumption that upon the expiration of 6 months, they will come back and, like Barrister Ayo said, they might decide to have a meeting. Let's have a closed door meeting. We'll sit with the president, we discuss this thing. By the time we go back, how do we know that these persons that are coming in, that we are reinstating, how do we know that they will come back and still work together harmoniously, hand in hand?
It's simple, yes sir. Somebody that has taken his
It's not that simple.
somebody that has taken it's simple to me.
It's not that
somebody
simple.
that has taken his bait, that has taken his bait, you will know when you see the person, because his hair will be well combed, there will be powder on the face, new clothes and all. Now the actions of the executive and his lawmaker will be shown to the people, because by the time there is no rancor, that's the only means we know.
The actions of the people that have been suspended, they've been suspended from their roles.
Yeah, so by the time they come back,
execution of their roles that you would know. But when they have not been allowed to even execute,
by the time they come back, and we are talking about what we are talking about.
Oh, your opinion that when they come back,
yes, that's what I know. It's not now. It's by the time they lift the suspension and state of emergency. It's by their doing that we'll know whether.
By the time I want to ask you this question categorically.
Yes.
Since the inception, since I was born, I've always known the masses to hate the government. There has been decline in the level of patriotism in Nigeria, and issues like this continue to water down patriotism. If you are saying that the suspension of the legislative, the suspension of the governor of Rivers State, that when they are reinstated after 6 months, that if they are not acting right to the understanding or to the perception of the president, that he can as well call for another state of emergency and declare their seats vacant or suspended or what have you. Does this not water down further patriotism? Will this not give rise to insurrection? Will the people of Rivers State not feel that they are being unjustly marginalized?
There must be an assurance from the president that placed it in the first place that there will be peace and order. If there is no assurance, then maybe the state of emergency will continue, because there must be an end to state of emergency. And so if there is no assurance for all the quarters affected, then the state of emergency should continue, because that's the reason for the state of emergency in the first place. So if there is no assurance, then what do we have to do? Then the state of emergency will continue. So, but if there is assurance, because this they have to do with is a political fight between the executive and the legislature.
My question is this: I think we're using, instead of using honey to catch bees, we're trying to fight fire with fire. I think the measure that the president, even if we argue or against the fact that he hasn't gone or traversed his power, I feel it is quite a harsh measure to take at this point in time, considering the critical state of the nation. Him coming into power, there has been a lot of uproar. There has been a lot of agitation in the hearts of people with the removal of subsidy, with constant inflation, the economic decline. There has been a lot of introducing this is a harsh measure, which I am of the opinion that it would water down patriotism, it will water down the rule of law, it will water down federalism in the nation. That's
what's at play right
now.
That's a single individual, the administrator, is playing the role of executive. It's playing the role of legislation.
No, it's not.
Okay, what are the responsibilities?
The National Assembly are the one overseeing the legislative arm.
So
if there's any approval in need, the sole administrator approach the National Assembly.
What are the responsibilities to be played by these administrator, right?
Yes, basically the executive roles of government. The executive arm of government is to be played by the sole administrator. While if there's any legislative role, Then there's a committee that has been set up by National Assembly to oversee the legislative arm of the state.
To report to the
Yes,
state
sir.
administrator.
So if it's the lawmaker to do, there's a committee by National Assembly that have been. So, and I believe that as a responsible president, we are not, or as a responsible leader, we are not expecting him to what? To close his eye and see that there's chaos in any part of Nigeria.
That argument can be made for Borno State. That argument can be made for other states in the north, even Ebonyi State. It can be made for insurrection has littered the country. It can be made for anywhere. Why Rivers State?
Because we all know the Borno that you may mention, or any part of the country. Okay, somebody who may mention on Lagos, so within weeks it was resolved. That is leadership for you. But Rivers State for years. What are we now talking about?
Well, I believe that we have discussed as much as we can discuss. We've dished enough on this. We have aired our opinions, but I think we'll just have a final take from our guests in the studio. Barisayo.
Thank you so much. This has been an eye-opener session on all. So, but it's simple. Any party that feel aggrieved, just as stated in the constitution, should approach the court of law.
Go to court.
Go to court for proper interpretation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Adefolake.
Final remark. I want to just use this opportunity to say we should see the position of the law as the law. I've heard a lot of persons saying this, saying that. The law remains the law, and we should not see the law as being harsh. So far, it remains the law. We should just make sure that what's in the law is what's being followed. And if you feel aggrieved, like Barrister says, go to the courts, allow the court to make interpretation. And I even think Nigerians should always make it an habit of approaching the court more.
Yes, I agree with you.
Like, we should make it an habit of approaching the courts more than we should allow courts interpret most of these sections. Like, we see the court as places that it's not anywhere. It's a public place for everybody to come to approach the court. Allow the court to interpret provisions of the law, especially public matters like this that can help the legal system even grow the more. So Nigerians should approach the courts more.
I agree with you. It's not just enough to sit in our little corners and criticize the government or for or against the decisions of the government. I think Nigerians should develop a patriotism towards ensuring that our constitution is upheld. And one of the ways we can do so is approaching the courts. The courts, like Barisayo said, the courts cannot just pick up issues on the streets. They need people to bring these issues before them, before they can litigate on them. And on that final note, we encourage you, whereas you have your opinions on the validity or otherwise on the declaration of the state of emergency, but you also have a further responsibility to ensure that the constitution is upheld and you can approach the court for the interpretation of the laws and for upholding the rule of law in Nigeria. Well, you heard it here first, and this has been Lawyers Tea with Ajilore Princess. Thank you for watching.